Weyes blood. I have been hyping this album up for... You know what, I'm going to try not stroking my beard for this review. Let's see if I can go a whole review without stroking my beard. That's a fun challenge. No. Weyes Blood has been on the scene for a few years now, but this is actually her first album on Sub Pop Records. She's always had a lovely warm sound that I can definitely get behind, but I've never really fell in love with her sound. I thought Front Row to Seat to Earth was a good album. However, when she did collaborate with Perfume Genius on his No Shape album, I did think that was quite fantastic. I do think it's worth bringing that album up because that album, in my eyes, was produced immaculately. The engineering was masterful on that thing. Now I know there were some people out there that liked the album but didn't love it as much as me, but for me the album was just near flawless in its sound, and I think Titanic Rising is on that level once again. I can say as many descriptive words as I want to for this album, but I don't think there's anything I can say that truly matches the sound quality of this album, because every track on this album is undeniably beautiful. Is probably a word you hear like the most when listening or reading reviews for albums, but like, what else can you use to call this album? Like, this album is absolutely lush, expansive. It is just so life-affirming. I think the song Every Day has genuinely given me life. Like, it's added years onto my life expectancy. That song is just absolutely flawless. The playful singing, the melodies that keep switching up on the verses, and then when it finally hits that momentous chorus, it just soars, and everything you've ever thought was gonna be bad just can never be bad again. I feel like the way she mocks herself a little bit on the song too, where she's talking about how, like, you know, she's kind of been a bit bad at love, but maybe it is just me that's the problem. Look, Weyes Blood, I don't think it is you. You are just so wonderful. It cannot be you. What a gem of a song, man. I mean, perfect pop songs like this don't come around very often. And it does kind of remind me of like mid-2000s indie pop, something like Camera Obscura would come out with, I suppose, in their like dream pop days. And this album does have a very dreamy aesthetic running throughout the album. There's something very traditional and old-fashioned about this album too. Like, it definitely reminds me of like some 60s, 70s type stuff, and I can't quite pin down what it is, but I think it's the vocals at times that give me this kind of like Joni Mitchell / Nico kind of thing. Maybe a little bit of Carole King coming through too, I suppose. That's not to knock her in any way though, because I do feel like she's very distinct in her own style, and she never once sounds like she's wearing her influences or anything like that. I've even seen people compare it to ABBA, and honestly some tracks aren't really too far away from that, although I do think that's a bit of an overstretch to make that comparison so directly. I think what I'm basically trying to say here is that you can make these comparisons pretty well, but when an artist is doing something that sounds so fresh and original while also having influences, it's very, very commendable. Because a track like Movies could not have been made back in the 60s and 70s, even when Baroque pop was at its freshest, you know? Like, this is the kind of song that could only be made today and built upon and become so much more expansive than it could have possibly have been made back in those days. I do love the lyrical theme of the song, and you could probably put a thread through this track and tie it in with the rest of the album, really, because of what she's saying here. So she's saying here that she adores movies, she loves movies, but at the same time, movies aren't representative of real life whatsoever. Movies I watched as a kid, the hopes and the dreams, don't give credit to the real things, and it's because movies do have this sheen over them that really don't show things the way that life actually ends up being. It's not as easy as like falling in love miraculously and having this romantic, perfect relationship where everything ends so well and happy ever after. And I think she's saying here that she loves movies because she can at least get something out of them that she can't possibly get out of real life. There's this hope within her that keeps praying that it will be that way one day, which is why she has this attachment to films, but in reality, it's never going to be like that. It's like they're there filling a void in her, essentially. Something to Believe is kind of similar as well, where she's talking here about how she just wants something visual, something to see, something in front of her that gives her something to believe in, and not just the voices in her head that she always has to listen to. Which again could be compared to movies, how something is there that you can see, it's there for you, you can kind of take cues, you can kind of take signals and get an understanding and grasp what exactly is going on. But without those visual cues, you're left to your own devices, I suppose. You're left to fend for yourself, which is rather dark when you listen to the music on this album that does feel so grandiose and momentous. I suppose that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of how her darker inner thoughts are coming through on the lyrics, but then it's paired with this really over-the-top, cinematic, grandiose instrumentation that shows this optimistic side of her. And that kind of brings me to the album title being named Titanic Rising. Obviously the Titanic sunk, lots of people died. The film, of course, also has this very over-the-top romantic love story, but then the optimistic side to her again sees that this Titanic will rise one day and come through and come back and everything will be happy again, but it won't. She's hopeful, but she's also hopeless, and she's essentially just looking for anything to find meaning in anything. The album ends off with the lyrics that state that she's just waiting for something beyond to give her meaning. Perhaps this is a reference to someone that's passed away, or even a reference to just something beyond her life that can come through and give her something that she can't really fulfill herself. I think it's poignant, and I think it's very beautiful as well, and this album to me is just absolutely fantastic. I can't think of many bad things to say about it, honestly. The only minor complaint I would say I have with this album is the track Mirror Forever. I think the percussion on the verses probably could have done with a bit more of an oomph to it, because essentially it's just finger snaps throughout and it's a bit hollow sounding. It does remind me of that nearly touched my beard, Lydia Ainsworth album that came out in 2017 though, the Darling of the Afterglow, which is an album I thought was really good, but not many people listen to it. And the sound of that track actually reminds me a little bit of that album. So it's not the worst thing for me, because it still sounds really good, just probably could have done with a bit of a better verse section, I suppose. But even still, lyrically it's important to the narrative here, because she's talking about how two people in love are playing a role, like in a film, I guess you could say. They're playing a part. It's not really true love. You're essentially just playing up to the role you're expected to be playing. It's just all a bit of a dream, essentially. It's all kind of what you want it to be, as opposed to what it actually is, but yet you still do what you can for that other person to make them happy. So yeah, Weyes Blood really nailed it on all fronts here. There's just so much to unpack from this album, and I think musically it's so fulfilling, and it will be for a very long time for me, I think. It's amazing. I think it's set to be a very highly regarded album, and I do hope it stays that way, because I think it deserves all the acclaim it's getting so far, and I hope it continues to get that acclaim. It's a huge shame, though, that albums like this don't really break past like music nerds and music critics. I mean, yeah, the people in the know will know how good this album is, but it's probably not going to really do well in terms of like commercial success, and it kind of makes me a little sad, because it deserves way more than it's going to get. But even still, that doesn't change how much I feel about the album anyway, because this is a 9 out of 10. Absolutely amazing. The best album I've heard so far this year. Don't know if it'll stay that way by the end of the year, but it's absolutely going to be near the top of the list no matter what. It's a phenomenal album, and I hope you think so too. And if you do agree, let me know what you think in the comments. If you don't agree at all, also let me know. But thank you for watching. Have a good day. I didn't stroke my beard. Ha ha ha, I didn't do it.